What's going on, everybody? It is that time again. The Sooners Illustrated Podcast, episode 150.
150.
On this Monday, February 3rd, 2025. Josh Callaway, James D. Jackson,
Mm-hmm.
Tom Green, 150, a little bit of a milestone. We've got a lot to talk about to celebrate it across several sports today on the program. Oklahoma's defensive staff finally solidified. Got obviously Nate Dreiling in. We talked about that a little bit last week on the Instant React show. They've since added Wes Goodwin, made some more announcements. We'll react to all of it as Oklahoma finally solidifying things on that side of the football. Here's a move into February. Of course, continue our position stats report series as well, finishing up on offense. We'll recap the weekends that were for both men's and women's basketball. And believe it or not, the start of softball season is in just a few days. Patty Gasso's team going for the 5-peat. That'll open up on Thursday. We'll talk about that a little bit as well on the back end. But, gentlemen, we'll start with football as we typically do. You know, Tom Call and I did the Instant Reaction show last Friday when Oklahoma brought in Nate Dreiling. He's going to coach linebackers. So I want to make sure I get everyone's positioning correctly. Inside linebackers is what Nate Dreiling is coming to do. No co-DC tag. We kind of speculated on that on the Instant Reaction show that he would probably get one. He didn't, at least in the official release. Just going to be coaching inside linebackers. And they also brought in Wes Goodwin from Clemson. Long speculated. We talked about Wes the last month plus since Zach Alley left. He's coming in to coach outside linebackers and also be an assistant linebackers coach just kind of in general. So he comes in from Clemson. And Brent Venables also in the same release. No cloak and dagger, no misdirection. Flat out said it. He's going to call the defense in 2025, which was also widely speculated and something that we talked about a lot over the last several weeks. Guys, just your reaction to all of it. Nate Dreiling comes in. He's not co-DC. They add Wes Goodwin. Brent Venables is going to call the defense. Brand Hall, Todd Bates remain co-DCs. All the movement, all the decisions. What stuck out to you guys and what's kind of your overarching takeaways from Oklahoma finally solidifying their defensive staff?
Yeah, I mean, we kind of expected that, look, if you weren't going to land Jim Knowles, that Brent Venables was probably going to take the reins of the defense because, as we've said before, like, there are very few people who he would entrust with defense, like fully, that are, as qualified or maybe more qualified than him. Again, he is a guy who for the last 25 years has been one of the best defensive coordinators in college football. And now entering a pivotal season with perhaps his job on the line, he's betting on himself. Mm-hmm. And look, if you're him, you like that confidence. He seemed pretty excited to get back into play calling. I know, obviously, he was very involved with the play calling his first 2 years as head coach, then kind of gave Zach Alley a little bit more of the leeway last season. But, he's back in the saddle. And look, I think it's really interesting that, obviously you're bringing in Nate Dreiling to coach inside linebackers, but you now have 4 guys on staff that have defensive coordinator experience between Brent Venables, Nate Dreiling, Brandon Hall from his time at Troy and Jacksonville State, and Wes Goodwin. And I think the Wes Goodwin hire is very important, even though he's, technically an analyst and assistant linebackers coach, because you look at his experience. He was Clemson's defensive coordinator the last 3 years. He replaced Brent Venables there. He had a top 25 SP plus defense all 3 years at Clemson, even though, they took a couple steps back in some areas this year, but he still helped that team get to the college football playoff, win the ACC championship. And he's got 7 years of experience working under Brent Venables already. Like, he knows how Brent likes to run a defense. He knows how he likes those linebackers to be coached. So there's a level of, intimate familiarity there, similar to what he had with Zach Alley last year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think it's the next best step when you missed out, obviously. Brent Venables calling his defense the way he's going to want to call it, it helps him out a lot. Now, you see it a lot on the offensive side with these offensive-minded coaches. They call the offense and are the head coach. And that's why kind of like Bob Stoops came out and was like, yeah, he could do both. There's no reason not to believe that. And so that's kind of the route that's going to happen here. And so I think it's a good move because obviously he has the pedigree of doing that. He has people under him that he trusts, with Wes Goodwin and the others, Nate Dreiling. I mean, you got guys like that to really beef up that room as well. So it's a good all-around move based on the circumstances that you got. And who knows, and maybe it could have been the best move overall in terms of actually getting this year accomplished the way you want to, with Brent Venables calling his own defense.
Yeah, no, like Tom said, I mean, Brent Venables is not naive to the fact that 2025 is make or break. I mean, this is it. So if you can't get a Jim Knowles, him doing it himself, calling the defense himself, like Tom said, betting on himself, it makes all the sense, in the world from that perspective. It's not like it's unheard of by any means. He did it 2 years ago. He did it in 2023 when Ted Roof was still the DC and they won 10 games. Obviously, this past year, he was able to pass those duties off to Zach Allen. The defense took a step forward. That's the question. Can the defense continue to take a step forward with Brent taking on that extra workload and not having really a true defensive coordinator on the staff? It's going to be Brent Venables essentially doing both, at the end of the day. So it makes all sense in the world to me. I love adding Wes Goodwin. There's no reason not to like that. There was a pushback a little bit. I felt like because it didn't end well at Clemson, like he's bonus. You know what I mean? Like he's just coming in to help the cause. I mean, you've with the way that the structure of the sport is now, and you basically have unlimited staffing spots, how it feels essentially.
Yeah,
you're not losing anything by adding Wes to the fold. He's a guy that Brent knows, and like Tom said, he knows what he's getting into working with Brent. They know each other, so that makes a lot of sense to me as well. And we'll see how it goes. But at the end of the day, what it boils down to, above all, is that Brent Venables said, "Hey, 2025, we have to win. I'm going to put everything I have on the table. I'm going to call the defense myself, and we're going to see if we can't, right the ship here and hopefully Ben Arbuckle can carry the load on offense, and you see where the chips fall from there." So it makes sense. It's not flashy like Jim Knowles would have been, but it makes sense.
Yeah, I was going to say another point on the Wes Goodwin thing is you're getting him at a discount, basically. Yeah. I think Clemson still owes him $2.8 million from his contract because he got a new 3-year contract like a year ago. And we don't know exactly what he's making right now, but based on what analysts typically make, it's probably going to be in the like $200,000 salary range. So you're getting a guy with Power 5 and college football playoff defensive coordinator experience at a huge discount. And then the other thing you mentioned they won 10 games ago with Brent basically calling the defense. Then I still think this defense can take another step forward, because the infrastructure is there. 2 years ago, look, that was their second season in Brent Venables' system. You're now entering year 4. A lot of these guys have been around. The coaches themselves are more familiar with the defensive system too. The players are familiar with it too. And now it's just Brent Venables, having his fingerprints all over it. So I think that they still have a chance to take another step forward, even with Brent calling the defense. The big piece of the puzzle is just like, is his involvement with the defense going to give him enough opportunity to take a step back from having his hands at all on the offensive side of the ball? Can he trust Ben Arbuckle to turn things around and give him the freedom to be able to fix things on that side of the ball with John Mateer and all the other pieces that they have?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the challenge now for Brent will be to continue to become a better head coach with that workload put on him, because we've talked about that at length the last few years since Brent's been here. Is Oklahoma's not good around the margins. They make big mistakes. They shoot themselves in the foot, clock management, whatever it may be. And it felt like that got better last year. It's certainly not where it needs to be, but it got better. How much was that a product of just Brent in year 3? And how much was that a product of Zach Allen taking the load off him? That's going to be a question that we won't know the answer to until the games start in the fall.
Yeah. And I think, Brent probably had a lot more on his plate last year just because of the offensive struggles and feeling the need to step in there, especially after firing Seth and all that stuff through 7 games. But if you look, they're giving Ben Arbuckle $1.5 million. He's being paid in the upper echelon of SEC assistants. That tells me that Brent is going to give him the freedom that he needs to be entrusted with handling that offense. And he's not going to be, prying around and, being like, hey, maybe we need to do this. Maybe we need to fix this. It's like, he is trusting this guy to essentially be the head coach of the offense right now.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that seems like that should be the best option. I mean, it's the guy that he has the experience of doing this. It's not like he just got him out of nowhere. It's short, but it's at Washington State and places like that where there are still some expectations to win and play well. And so we saw the numbers that John Mateer was able to pull up in his offense and Ben Arbuckle. And, you just kind of put it all together and, do it here. Like you said, Brent Venables doesn't really want to have to do everything, obviously. Just why you hire coaches for a reason. So having that is helpful. So we'll see.
We shall see. And good to finally have it all solidified. It felt like we talked about it a little bit in the instant reaction last week and just throughout the last few weeks, just kind of how crazy was this continue to linger with February coming up. And, spring ball's still a little ways off, but not that far. It's just a shade over a month from the first practice. It's like we need to get this stuff kind of ironed out and set in stone. So Oklahoma got the defensive staff in place. They know what everyone's duty is going to be. And here you go. We'll see how it all shakes out. So going to be interesting, and I look forward to getting spring ball started in a little over a month. To that end, we've been doing the position status report series on the Monday shows. We go through the roster one position at a time, break it down a little bit, and kind of give a little state of the union for that position. We're going to finish offense today with the offensive line. So, guys, this was Bill Beanbo's group. Weird discourse last year because it started off very poor. Obviously, a couple of nightmare games with sack totals that were heinous, being allowed and couldn't run the ball and all that stuff that we talked about a lot. Had a lot of injuries, especially early, that were a big part of that. Certainly felt like they found their footing a little bit toward the end of the year. Left side of the line, especially Logan Howland, Hito Zaitis stepped up, did some nice things. Those guys are back. Troy Everett is back. Jacob Sexton is back. Jake Taylor is back. Yeah, I mean, a lot of the pieces you saw play are back. All those young guys, you hopefully take a step up. They made additions, obviously, with Luke Baklenko and Derek Simmons, who are both theoretically guys who could play for you this coming season. Febechi Nwewu also back. Your read on all of it. Offensive line. I think this is a position that I feel like it's a little bit some people could probably feel not great, and other people could feel very confident. Like, I feel like you can kind of make an argument both ways for you guys, the offensive line, and how it kind of sits right now with what they added, what they bring back, all of it going into the spring. How are you feeling about Bill Beanbo's group?
I think I feel a little bit better about it than perhaps last year at this time, or even like at the beginning of last season. Part of that is just how promising the development of Logan Howland and Hito Zaitis on that left side was. The fact you have Troy Everett healthy and back, I think that helps a lot. The right side is still a bit of a question mark to me because you're losing two guys at right tackle in Michael Tarquin and Spencer Brown, who started most of the games there. I'd probably lean toward Derek Simmons being the favorite to start at right tackle, just given his experience and what he's done, even though it has been at a lower level. I'm curious how Jacob Sexton and Jake Taylor are going to factor into things when they're healthy. Is Eddie Pierre-Louis going to make a push for that right guard job with Febechi Nwewu? I know Febechi Nwewu played more snaps and started every game at right guard last season. He played more snaps than anybody on that offensive line, but they weren't, he didn't always grade. The production wasn't always there, but he was, their best option last season. Is EPL going to take that step forward and push for that starting job this year? Yeah. And then, where do guys like Isaiah Autry-Dent fall in when they're, in year two? What can you expect from Michael Fasusi in his first year? I imagine he'll probably be the backup at left tackle, but is he a guy who can, develop quick enough to contribute in some meaningful way? I think I like the pieces in this offensive line group better than I did a year ago. And look, they don't need to be world beaters. I don't think they just need to be, a little bit above average for this offense to have a chance.
And I think that's kind of the reason. I think you can feel a little bit more optimistic about this group, not necessarily confident that maybe some are thinking, but optimistic, I think, is for sure the best because of you saw the improvement near the end of the season with the guys that they had on the roster. And they brought in some really, really good guys that you just talked about. Michael Fasusi, Ryan's coming in as well. There's others on that list that could possibly play for you middle to later the season down the line if necessary, if everything goes well. I think the offensive line overall it should take a step forward from what it was last year. You think with the experience they have now, with all those guys coming back and playing again, it should be okay. And I think that's the sentiment. That's where I'm feeling overall. But I think that's the sentiment that others should think as well. Yeah,
the options are certainly plentiful. Health is going to be obviously a massive key. Last year it was just carnage. Early part of the year, it got better, but early part of the year, the offensive line was every bit as beat up as the wide receivers as any position, and they were scraping them. We were wondering, who was going to play center. Like, it was to that point, especially when you're down to Josh Bates, had to start some games. Like, it was really not in a great place for a while, and that is really hard to get any sort of a chemistry and a rhythm when that's the situation. So they were able to find their footing a little bit in the back half of the year, kind of find a five that they liked, and it got better. At the end of the season, they ran the ball a lot better, and so you see what they can do, this coming year. Like you guys both said, what can Michael Fasusi give you, if anything? Is he a guy who can help you right away? I don't know. I mean, we'll find out. Ryan Foje, the same thing. A guy who had a great high school career and a great senior season. I made the comparison with Colin on the Thursday show. It's not apples to apples, but it is kind of similar in that, last season on the defensive side coming into the year, it was David Stone, and we're all pumped, and rightfully so. Then Jane Jackson comes in and he had an immediate huge impact. It feels like it's kind of a similar situation with Fasusi and Foje. Like nobody's really talking about Ryan Foje, and and when I talk to guys who do recruiting for a living and cover it, and I value their opinion, they love Ryan Foje. So can he be a sneaky, be in the mix for some snaps to start the season? That's an interesting question as well. So, it seems, again, you have a lot of options. You play a little better down the stretch. Some guys got some confidence. Logan Howlandito Zaida in particular, like we said. I feel like you have to at least feel pretty good about it, relatively speaking. Let me ask you guys this, since we are finished up with offense today. Just kind of in general with the whole offense. Just obviously, I mean, you can't not feel better from where it was. It was a complete disaster. But I guess just your kind of overarching thoughts on the offense. And I guess the best way for me to put it, how realistic is it that Ben Arbuckle and John Mateer can make this offense good in one offseason from where it was last year? I guess your confidence of the offense is going to be, obviously, again, we're all hoping it can be better. I mean, God, hope it can be better. That's a low bar. But just legitimately, not a weakness, I guess, in 2025.
I mean, I'm pretty confident. Part of that is you feel better about the offensive line. And we talked a lot before the season that the offensive line was basically either going to raise the ceiling of this offense or it was going to lower the floor. And generally speaking, it lowered the floor because of struggles. You can't get the offense going if the offensive line isn't performing well. Mm-hmm. And then you look at just how decimated that wide receiver room was. If your receivers are healthy this year, you feel the offense is going to be much better.
Yep.
And I think just everything kind of adds up. John Mateer, obviously super talented. Having him and Arbuckle together is going to do wonders. Getting Deion Burks back, getting those running backs back and healthy, and I don't know if a Giovanni Gibson or a Keontae Lewis are going to be as good as a Nick Anderson was, or as reliable as a Jalil Farouk was over his career. But if those guys can stay healthy, I think they can be very productive. And forget the cliche, but it's almost like they're trying to moneyball it. It's like, how are you going to replace Nick Anderson? It's like, well, you're not, but you might replace him in the aggregate.
Yeah.
So if those guys can stay healthy, I think I feel a lot better about just the overall outlook of this offense. Because look, Ben Arbuckle has shown in a short time that his offenses can produce and he can maximize, the production from, the talent base that he is provided.
Mm-hmm. And I don't think, to go off the question, I don't think it's necessarily John Mateer and Ben Arbuckle is going to be the make or break for the whole thing overall. I think, as you spoke about it with the offensive line, it's more of injuries. Was the play calling bad at times? Was the quarterback play bad at times? Yes, obviously last year. But I think having a healthy group would have changed a lot of things for those units, especially when you talk about getting into rhythm as a quarterback and as a play caller. Just knowing this play, if I call this play, I'm going to get my 5 yards that I want to really boost up this offense. And so I think most of the OU's offensive problems happen in the offseason, not necessarily getting ready strength-wise and things like that, maybe overdoing some things where you end up getting hurt and things like that. Take this time more serious, and then you'll have that leap going into this year. I think that's where it's at.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm optimistic. Certainly, I have to almost remind myself how bad it was, because I definitely, when leaving the Armed Forces Bowl, I remember distinctly when we did the interaction, Colin and I on the field, one of the main takeaways was Ben Arbuckle's got a lot of work to do because the offense was a complete and utter disaster, obviously, last season. Patience is going to be key. We've made the comparison to 2014 and 2015 about a million times. I'll do it again. 2015, obviously we all remember how it ended. and it was great at the end. But the first half of that year, Lincoln Riley, it's not like they came in and set the world on fire at all. It was a slow start. The Tennessee game, which was everyone remembers this amazing win in Knoxville, they had 3 points with like 7 minutes left in that game. Like it took the offense some time. After it was a dumpster fire in 2014. It's not like Lincoln just came in and waved a magic wand and it was fixed. It took a little time. So, patience. Again, optimistic. The bar is very low. The defense should be good. So it's like, just don't be horrendous. Don't turn the ball over 50 times. And you should have a chance to win games. But keeping him, I'm trying to keep it, in context. It's a lot of work to be done. It was not anywhere close to where it needs to be a year ago. So we'll see. But reasons to be optimistic, I think, are also fair. All right, let's shift over to some other sports. We have a lot going on. Moving to February. Stretch run for basketball and diamond sports are getting going. We'll get to softball in a little bit. Let's start with hoops, though. Tom, you and I were at the LNC on Saturday, and Oklahoma just mollywopped Vanderbilt. A 30-point win after trailing at halftime. They lost on Tuesday in College Station, did some good things in that game. Jeremiah Fears, though, was shut out. Easily his worst game of his freshman season, but he bounced back. He was great on Saturday against Vandy, who ended up playing good basketball. Vanderbilt was in the top 25, had picked up a couple of really big wins, granted at home, but still big wins over Kentucky and Tennessee, playing good ball. Tom, that second half was probably the best half of basketball that maybe Oklahoma's had under Porter Moser. They scored 61 points, just clamped Vanderbilt on the other end of the floor. It was immaculate. It was basically a perfect 20 minutes. That's why they won by 30. Your feelings with this team right now? I mean, I think that there's some cautious optimism. I mean, you've kind of, if you're Oklahoma, you stabilized a little bit. After that tough start, you won 3 out of 4. You won all the games that you needed to. We've kind of all said, like, they need to win these 3. And give them credit. They went and they won them. This week is brutal. We get to that in a second. But, it feels like they found their footing a little bit. Jeremiah Fears is playing a little better. A&M game notwithstanding. Dayton Forsythe has provided quite the spark. He's the star of OU sports right now. I guess your feeling coming out of that game on Saturday is it kind of feels like, again, Oklahoma maybe, I don't know if the corner being turned, but it feels like they've kind of stabilized after the bad start.
Yeah, it's hard to say that they're turning a corner when you look at the week that's ahead. It's going to be a very difficult week playing at number 1 Auburn and then hosting, number 4 Tennessee now.
Number 4.
The opportunity is there, but those are 2 very tall tasks. But like you said, they stabilized after that really rough start. Dropped 4 straight to open SEC play. Now they've won 3 of 4. Some good wins in there. The win against Vanderbilt, the computers loved it. And just how competitive they were at Texas A&M too. I mean, they moved up, I think, 8 spots in the net rankings. I think they have their highest KenPom rating of the season right now after that Vanderbilt win. Margin of victory does matter to some extent in those types of games. And it's also helped that, that loss to Texas a few weeks ago has moved from a quad 2 loss to a quad 1 loss. So Oklahoma does not have any bad losses on its resume right now. They're undefeated in quad 2, 3, 4. I think they're 4-5 in quad 1 games. That's still really solid. Plenty of more opportunities to come to strengthen the resume from that aspect. It's going to take a lot of work, but commend them for being able to kind of stabilize the way that they have. That second half against Vanderbilt was absurd. 23-0 run. There's an analytics site, Evan Miyakawa runs it, and he likes to track kill shots, which are described as 10-0 runs. And the data last year, teams that go on 20-0 runs or better win like 91% of their games. So clearly, like, going on a 23-0 run, like, that game was over at that point. But to hold Vanderbilt to 27 points in the second half, score 61 is just insane. It's good to see Jeremiah Fears, bounce back from that Texas A&M game. And, we kind of talked about it, I think, last week, and I know Porter Moser talked about it after the game, but that Texas A&M matchup is just, like, uniquely difficult for Jeremiah Fears because he's so ball dominant in the way Texas A&M defends, and their length, too, makes it really difficult for him. So as long as Oklahoma doesn't play them again, I think Jeremiah Fears is going to be pretty solid the rest of the way. But Jalen Moore continues to be Jalen Moore. Dayton Forsythe has been a revelation for them. He had the best game of his career against Vanderbilt. Played 23 minutes, which was, I believe, his season high or second most he's played in the season. He played 27 against Alcorn State, which nobody scored, but playing 23 minutes against a top 25 opponent, scoring 14 points. He had career high 3 steals, rebounded well again. And again, like not everything he does will show up in the box score, but he contributes to winning basketball when he's on the court. And that is really important for Oklahoma right now, especially with, some of the struggles that like a Kobe Elvis has gone through, a Duke Miles has gone through at times. To get that kind of production from a freshman and add it to the production that you're getting from Jeremiah Fears, who is a non-traditional freshman, that is huge for this team right now and has really kind of helped lift them during these last few weeks.
And I think it's cool to see a guy like Dayton Forsythe have this run because, I got to see a lot of that during the state tournaments, throughout his runs there and things like that. He was like a guy that I thought could contribute earlier, but I know there was some pushback because he was a freshman coming in, things like that. But I always saw him like you see Xavier Robinson on the football team this time last year. Just like that guy had proved himself at the high school level in the state of Oklahoma, but just came in a little bit underranked and undervalued, I think, overall. And now you see, him having this run. That's pretty good for him. He's got the nickname, was it Sparky? What is this?
Sparky.
What is it? Yeah.
Sparky,
So he's sparking runs, man.
Morris gave that to him.
Yeah, that's a pretty cool situation for him, in terms of what he's done, maybe in the offseason and early on in this season to get to prove that he could be on the floor out there.
Yeah, the Dayton Forsythe thing is really interesting because I'm not sure he would even be playing much at all right now if Jadon Jones was like healthy from the outstart of the season.
Yeah,
he's a guy that you were expecting to maybe even start in the backcourt alongside Jeremiah Fears or alongside a Duke Miles or Kobe Elvis, and just has not been available. And they're going to have to make a decision soon on him and Jeff Nwankwo of whether those guys are going to redshirt this season or if they're going to try to get in there for the stretch run. I think for Jadon Jones, it probably makes sense to redshirt just because this would have been his last season. Like, do you want to return just for 10 games if you're not fully, integrated into the rotation and not feeling, 100% with your back, even though you are able to practice right now? So we'll see kind of where that goes. But I mean, shout out to Dayton Forsythe for, earning the trust of the coaching staff because, we've talked about it before that, before this season, Porter Moser did not like to play freshmen much. But he's kind of had to embrace that this year based on the circumstances and based on the freshmen that he's been able to get to come in. And Jeremiah Fears has obviously done a lot for this team this year. He's a big reason why they are where they are. But for Dayton Forsythe to come in and kind of be a little bit of a surprise and provide that spark off the bench has been huge for them these last 3 weeks in stabilizing the season.
Yep. I mean, he's been known to be a guy that rises to the moment. Like Josh probably knows about it with them. Yeah. One of the tournament champions as a very small school going into beat 6A schools and like that. He rises to the moment. So you see that again with him in college now. So he's moving in the right direction, I think.
I'm entertaining the possibility of should Dayton Forsythe move into the starting 5. I mean, he's been tremendous, and he's been kind of hit or miss for Duke Miles, been kind of hit or miss for Kobe Elvis. It's just kind of he was so good, and that game didn't start well. They were down 12. In the first half, and he, Sparky came in and he flipped it. He does. With his effort, getting on the ground for loose balls. I mean, he kind of makes the whole thing go in a lot of ways. So I'm entertained by him. It's been awesome to watch. It's fun to see the Oklahoma kid come in and make an impact. Mm-hmm. And like we said, the stretch ahead, number 1 Auburn tomorrow, number 4 Tennessee on Saturday, and then number 15 now Missouri next Wednesday in Columbia. Can you get me one of these 3? That's I mean, you're not going to win in Auburn. That's just I'd be floored if that happened. Auburn is so far and away number 1. I think Auburn could probably lose and stay number 1. That's how far, and that's unheard of in college hoops. You lose, you move down. But they are just unbelievably good. That game's in Auburn. They have a great home crowd. So if Oklahoma can just hang in that's a good sign. But then Tennessee at home at Missouri. Probably got to find a way to split that. I mean, the schedule's tough. You got to find a way to win games. But they've done what they needed to. They've won the games they needed to. You really wish you didn't blow that A&M game earlier or the Texas game, both, but especially A&M because you had the big lead. But they're in position. There is a path. You can see it. There's a path. We're in February. That was about a month ago, and there's a path. So you take that.
Yeah, I think you need to try to basically just like split every week from here on out.
Yeah.
If you do that, you feel great about your chances.
Yeah, and if you can get one of these signature wins, Tennessee comes, Kentucky comes, if you can just get like one of those, you're in a good shape. Because we're talking before we start recording, you don't really have a bad loss. Your metrics are pretty good. The SEC is brutal, so you're not going to really get a bad loss no matter what game like we said, LSU at home is probably the one game left the rest of the way that you really don't want to lose that one. But the rest of them, it's like they all help you more than they hurt you. Now, again, you still have to win games, but they're in good shape. They're in good shape. It's a long way to go, but they're in pretty good shape. As for the women, James, you and I were at the LNC yesterday. A rough stretch for them. Now, the schedule has been really, really tough, obviously. But the men have won 3 of 4. The women have lost 3 of 4. And it's the reverse. They're these big games that they had a chance to make a statement and help themselves. They're not able to capitalize. And their schedule gets easier. But in women's hoops, which we talked about many times, you get to that top 4 seed, you get to host. It's hard to see them having a resume to warrant that with what's left on the season because they lost LSU. They played really tough. They almost had a great comeback in Baton Rouge, but they lose to LSU, and they lose at home yesterday to Kentucky. Georgia Moore for Kentucky just destroyed them. She had 43 points. I guess, James, for you, panic level, it kind of feels like this team right now is just simply good, not great. And the hope coming into the year was they were going to be great. And they just don't seem like they really are meshing the way everyone envisioned they would. Again, they're still good. They've only lost to good teams, but it's like they're just not quite clicking the way that we all had hoped.
Yeah, you add a loss like Mississippi State in there.
Yeah, that one's bad.
Unranked team. That's a pretty bad one. But I think that's what it comes down to. They're not meshing the way that we thought. Like when Reagan Beers was brought in, we thought, okay, this is already a good 3-point shooting team. This is going to be an unstoppable offense, and that's kind of what hasn't happened for them. The 3-pointers haven't fallen the way they've wanted to, and teams have been able to key in on Reagan Beers now. I asked the Kentucky coach yesterday just about this, and he was like, yeah, we actually wanted to key in on Reagan and let them have the 3-point shot at the top of the key, which is like, you just don't hear stuff like that. And OU could not capitalize on it. They were 1 of 14. Yeah. They were 1 of 14 until the third quarter. Like the end of the third, it was like 1 minute left, and Zaya Van hit that 3-pointer. That was their second 3-pointer of the entire game. And so you add on to that, like their offensive issues, you add on to the turnover issues they've been having, trying to get the ball to Reagan in certain situations and then trying to play too fast. And then you have this last week where the opposing guard has just had a career night against OU's defenders. Like it didn't really matter who they threw at him. Against LSU, it was Michaela Williams, who had 37 in that game. What was it, 38? 37 to 38 in that game. And then you had Georgia Moore in this past game where she had 43 on your home court. And like the guards are getting a little bit too comfortable. And I asked Georgia about that as well. Like you're seeing different guards that OU's throwing at you. What how are you able just to find your spots? And she kind of knew just based off of tape that they all kind of guard differently. Like Nevaeh Tot is more a loose guard, I guess you could say. And so she was like, I'm gonna focus on my shot more when she's guarding me. When Zaya Van's guarding me, she's more aggressive and up on me. So I'm gonna get to the rim more.
Yeah.
Which is like, man, you can already see that. Like if she's seeing that now, like most teams that are really, really good are seeing that as well. So OU has to find that balance where they can get a guard that can, or just find one of those two guards to really just play defense in a better situation. Now that's kind of why Raina Scott was inserted into the offensive lineup, was because she started playing defense a lot more and did a lot more aggressiveness and a lot better throughout the season, to where she took the spot from Tot, the starting role from Tot this season. But it just didn't work out in that game, especially where you had to go to Zaya Van down the stretch. And after so long, once a point guard is comfortable like that, she's letting everything go, and it's going to feel really, really good. And that's what Georgia had going for her in this win over OU.
Yeah, no, I agree with everything you said. It's just kind of, you're looking at, they've had chances to get, and they beat Tennessee, Knoxville. That was a really good win back at the early part of January. But, it's kind of just the Texas game to start it. They just have not been able to quite come through in these big games. And the LSU game, that's you're going into Baton Rouge. That's a great environment. And they were right there. They're not won in the final minute, but they're doing this. It's not the sky's falling. They're still in good shape. They still have they have a ton of winnable games coming up. Their schedule lightens up. Yeah. Their January was much more tough than their February and into March. But yeah, just a little bit of a disappointing week, especially not to bounce back yesterday. It felt like after the way they played in Baton Rouge, that like if you come back and take care of business at home against Kentucky, you kind of were feeling good about things. So they'll let that one get away. will sting a little. They go to Ole Miss now next on Thursday. It's their only game this week because they wrap around and play at home against Auburn next Monday. So we'll obviously have another show before then. But another tough game, though, in Oxford. Ole Miss, not ranked, but a good team. So
they're getting votes.
Make a statement.
And so, they've been ranked before this season. They're getting votes. So it's not like just a pushover team. So it's still going to be a challenge. The good thing for OU, as you said, the losses they have are pretty good outside of Mississippi State. I mean, they're really, really good teams because you talked about it just this past couple of weeks. Of the 3 or 4 losses, it's been like the number 2 team in the country, the number 7 team in the country, now the number 12 team in the country. Like, it's those type of teams that are losing to. So they have to figure out a way to play their best for entirety of a game, because a lot of times they're getting off the slow starts in those big games. And that's what's hurting them the most. When they play other teams that are maybe unranked, like you saw against Georgia last week, they're winning those games by 30 points. So, like, there's something that's there that they're just not doing. The intimidation factor, I don't know if that's a thing in this situation or how that's going, but there's something not clicking for them when they have to go against these top teams. Now, they have the win against Tennessee earlier in the year, who was number 15 at the time. They're number 17, I think, right now. So there's still a good win there, but it took a lot to get that because they won that one by 1 point and Tennessee missed the final shot. So it was like, how does that work out? So OU needs to find how to play well in the big moments, and that's the main issue they're having right now. They're not doing that.
For sure. Big game in Thursday. Go to Oxford, and we'll see how that goes. A chance to try and get back on track against a good Ole Miss team on the road on Thursday.
Mm-hmm.
All right, before we go, it is February, which means Diamond Sports, they always sneak up. Softball especially sneaks up because they start right at the beginning of February. Media Day was Saturday. Full press conference is there. Patty Gasso and the players. It's on the YouTube channel if you missed it. They play on Thursday. They play a real-life game on Thursday.
Yep.
If you weren't with us last year, I know we have a lot of new viewers and listeners since this time last year. James spearheads our softball coverage. I'll handle baseball. That media day, by the way, is Wednesday. Their season starts next week. So we'll get into that a little bit more next week. But, James, real quick, just for you, I mean, as far as what you're watching for, I mean, the start of the season, it's kind of a new era for OU softball.
Mm-hmm.
They're the names that everyone has been used to that have been around forever and won 4 straight national titles. They're all gone. Jada Coleman, Kinsey Hansen, Tiare Jennings, they've all had their careers come to an end. So it's, I was looking at, the roster a little bit the other day and the player representatives that were at the media day. And I was sitting back like, I don't know the team. Like, I feel like a little like this is a new roster completely. Some things you're going to be watching for going into the start of the season, I guess, and, what are going to be the headlines, in the early part of the year as they just try to learn their new squad, basically go for a 5P, which is obviously absurd.
That's the thing here. So there's so many different players. There were 7 or 8 spots in the lineup that pretty much are going to be a little different here. Now, based on, who's pitching and things like that. The main thing is, first of all, OU is not going to be this power heavy team where they can hit every single person can hit home runs and you can expect that. It's going to be a little different this year. They're more of a speedy team now. And so Pat Gasso was talking about that too at the media day. It was like, how do I coach this? How do I figure this out? What moments do we, take advantage of our speed and things like that? So that's going to be something to really, really watch for at the beginning of this season. And the other thing to watch out for, like I just said, was who's going to play where. Like, that's going to be a big thing. You replace what so happened to be the greatest softball class of all time. I mean, just winning 4 straight, that class in general, you have to replace them now. And you have to try to figure out a way to win without them. And I kind of put something together as for our members on the Sooners Illustrated site. But the outfield, you're going to see Cassidy Pickering out there for sure because we saw her last year. Hannah Core or Maya Bland are actually fighting for a spot out there as well. Maya Bland played a lot of times. You saw her more against Texas. You saw Hannah Core, throughout the year, she's kind of came in spots for them. And she's had back surgery, though. So, like, it was her second back surgery. And so you got to think, where is she going to be at? Who's going to be out there with Cassidy Pickering and the others and things like that? The newcomers that you brought in, a part of them was, Abby Dayton, who we know for sure is going to be an outfitter on this team. She's one of those players that you're going to watch out for as being like maybe the next star of this team because she was that good at Utah before she came over. She was at the media day and you got to talk to her as well. Like, she's that good. So be on the lookout for Abby Dayton in terms of the newcomers. The other ones, Agbayani, came over from BYU. They were able to beat Oklahoma at Love's Field last year in the series. And she was a big reason why. So convincing her to come over was a really big thing. I think she's going to be a starter. I think it's second base for OU. And then you'll have, the corners will be, Nelly and Sydney Sanders, kind of the usual. Nelly was on this team last year, but had the red shirt. So she's not like a new name, but she'll be on the field for the first time for OU. And so you have that. And then shortstop is just up for grabs right now. I'm not entirely sure how they're going to go with that. And Patty Gasso didn't really go towards us when we asked her about the lineups and things like that. We don't really know. But I think Gabby Garcia, somebody like that could possibly play that role. And we'll see. But we know for sure that Isabella Emmerling will be the catcher. And we thought that when she first got pulled over from the transfer portal, that was going to be her spot to replace Kenzie Hansen, which is a very, very tough thing to do. A catcher like Kenzie Hansen was. But at least she's on the coaching staff. So you'll have her in Isabella Emmerling's ear to really figure this thing out. And so all those names I just named out, you got to get used to those names. That's the biggest thing. As you talked about it, Josh, there's so many different faces and names on this team. Where are you going to go? So that'll be the fun thing to watch out for as we get started on Thursday, which is, it's just right around the corner. It's already here.
Certainly a lot of games to try and to play around with some things and to, work some different lineups in and play a lot of different players. They play 6 games this week in 4 days out in California, as they typically do. They go out to California to start the season. They play Thursday. The openers is 5:30 Central Time. CSUN, which I think is Cal State Northridge. I hope I'm not wrong on that. They play first on Thursday. They play San Diego State right after. They play 2 Thursday, 2 Friday, 1 Saturday, 1 Sunday. So that's a ton of games. 6 games in 4 days to start the season. So if they're not conditioned, they will be after this weekend. That's a lot of softball in 4 days out there in California. So keep up with that. Obviously, a lot of coverage to come on Sooners Illustrated. And again, the full media day is on the YouTube channel as well from Saturday, if you missed it.
Oh, to throw in there too, Sam Landry is most likely the ace for this season. I know that may be a big question too, because you're replacing Kelly Maxwell in the circle. It looks like it's going to be Sam Landry. And even Emma Parker, who was all-around player for OU last year, she's going to be pitching this year as well. So, she's going to be literally do everything this season. So that was a fun thing to learn about as well. She's going to be out there and things like that. So see what happens.
Also, shout out, I forgot to mention, I just remembered, shout out Patty Gasso, named the U.S. Olympic coach today as well. She's going to coach the Olympic team in the 2028 Olympics, which is in L.A. Obviously, she has California roots. So that's extra cool for her. It'd be cool anyway.
Well, softball's
in OKC.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I forgot. You're right. All right.
Yeah.
Still, I guess. But, yeah, you're right. It's going to be right down the road. So that makes all sense.
Where she wins all of her trophies at. So, this is, the best time for her. Yeah, we'll see.
That's true.
So opening ceremonies and all that will be in LA. So maybe the softball team will go out there and then it's a short flight.
Yeah.
I'm curious just how many of the players are going to be OU players. So it's going to have.
Yeah. And you think about it, all of them are from kind of they play travel ball with the OC Batbusters, which is out there in California. So there's so much familiarity for them. So that'll be pretty cool.
Absolutely. All right, I think that's it. Be back on Thursday with Colin to do some more of the recruiting side. It's moving to February. Obviously had some big visitors in town this past weekend. We'll talk to Colin about how those visits went and again, some other stuff as well as per usual on Thursday with him. 3 of us will be back next Monday. Wrap up the weekends for obviously for both basketball teams to continue our position report series. We'll go to the defensive side for the first time next week. I think some more happy conversations over there. We'll start that next Monday. That's it for today. For Tom Green, James D. Jackson, I'm Josh Callaway signing off for now. We'll see you next time right back here on the Sooners Illustrated podcast.
See you.